How's it going? Thad Brown here with you on the Endgame. It is Monday, April the 6th, better known as National Championship Monday. NCAA basketball finalists tonight, Michigan and UConn. And then it'll be one shining moment, one of the best sports moments of the year. I know the younger generation isn't appreciated as much. I love it. I enjoy not only the pomp and circumstance, but just the video editing part. We will talk a lot of college basketball today, with the championship game being today. That is a topic that's been in the headlines quite a bit, not only on the men's side, but on the women's side. We will get into Gino Auriemma and Dawn Staley, the most recent tete-a-tete, most recent issue between those two. Also want to talk about ABS, which last week we loved, and we still love on this show, but there are a number of fans who have a problem with ABS being accurate, which is a fascinating thing to get into. So we will discuss that. A little bit of football too. Plus the Sabres, they are into the playoffs. Congrats to all you Sabres fans out there who've waited 14 years to hear those words. We'll talk a little hockey too. But like I said, let's start with NCAA basketball today. And if you go on X, or if you were on ESPN watching basketball, I assume this is from yesterday, there is a great conversation, which is now on my feed. I saw it on the feed of Carl Jones, and I reposted it to my feed, Thad Brown 7. It is John Calipari, Seth Greenberg, Jay Williams, and Jay Billis, all talking about the current NIL situation, what's good about it, what's wrong with it. And obviously this is something that's a huge topic when it comes to the public discussion when it comes to college sports. NIL is much different, a giant change from what college sports was like 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, and not everybody likes it. So recently, last week, the president put down an executive order, which probably won't really have any teeth from what most legal experts say, but certainly was a directive to change what's going on, to stabilize sports. Now, the president said he would like to see things go back to the way they are, or the way they were years ago, which that ain't going to happen. I mean, the toothpaste being out of the tube doesn't even feel like it sufficiently describes the current marketplace of college sports. And it's really the way it should be. You know, I tell the story all the time. When I was going to Hofstra University, the college basketball coach then was Jay Wright, who went on to become a legend, a national champion with Villanova. And I was walking around campus one day, and being someone who was well involved in the media, I talked to Jay Wright, did interviews. So he knew who I was, and he saw me heading from the academic side back to where I was living. He said, "Hey, you want to ride?" I'm like, "Sure, no problem." So Jay Wright, this is really cool, by the way, don't get me wrong. Jay Wright, the basketball coach, is, giving me a ride back to the athletic side and talking about, what are you going to do this weekend? What are your plans are? And I said, I don't know, I'm going to go out to this bar, do this thing. Whatever I was going to do, I followed it up with, I'm probably not going to do anything that's too dissimilar than what your kids on your team are going to do. And Jay Wright stopped me right there. Jay Wright said, hey, my kids aren't going to do any of that. My kids have so many NCAA rules around them that they don't do much more than stay in their room all weekend, because they can't go out and get jobs because of NCAA regulations. They can't get money because of rules about amateurism. And mind you, I went to college in the 90s, so this is like 30 years ago. This is almost ancient history at this point. And it really made an impression on me, though, about how kids lived in those days. And this is when the NCAA tournament made millions, not billions with a B. It still felt wrong then when I heard it, and it felt more wrong 10 years ago when, again, the numbers progressed to where it was 10 digits on the left side of the decimal point as opposed to just 7. So there's no doubt, I think, in my mind, and really the mind of anyone who is any sort of reasonable thinker, that we're not going back to the way things were 5 or 10 years ago. The idea that college kids go to school and play sports for a scholarship might as well be the earth is flat or you have to take a horse and buggy to get from one side of the country to the other. They're just things that don't exist anymore. That doesn't mean that NIL is the foolproof answer, that the system the way it is right now is exactly how it should be. Forget about what you think about NIL, what your opinions are, whether the numbers are right, whether the method is right, whether the number of transfers is right. Let's just look at this logically. We are taking a system of sports, the NCAA, that has existed for about 100 years, and we are almost totally reinventing how things work in the last 5. The idea that a 100-year-old institution is going to be fixed in 5 years doesn't make any sense. So if I don't think it's wrong or ridiculous to point out that the way NIL is being operated right now is not the end game. This is not where we should land when it comes to how best to distribute the resources and the revenue that these college athletes are having a giant hand in accruing. So the conversation, like I said, went on the ESPN college basketball discussion show. I don't know what show it was. I'm sure it was some preview, something about the Final Four that happened, I'm assuming on Sunday. And it was a really, really smart conversation. It's 7 minutes. I highly recommend you go out and find it. Most of it is Jay Bilas talking, which frankly is going to be true for any show that Jay Bilas is on. But it was mostly him making the point that these are not amateurs anymore. These are athletes who are professionals. He actually said a couple times, no one calls it boys college basketball. It's men's college basketball. So these are kids, obviously, that can vote. These are, and I keep calling them kids because I'm going to get into that in a minute. But Jay Bilas does have a point that athletes who play college sports are paid like professionals. And in many ways, outside of the world of college sports, young men of that age are treated as adults. They can certainly be charged as adults in crimes. They can vote. There are many of them that, not all of them can, but many of them can legally buy alcohol, obviously. So in a lot of ways, although we still call them kids, the idea of NIL and paying these athletes has just further accelerated the growth curve and further pushed them to the side of being treated like adults. The rejoinder from John Calipari and Seth Greenberg, who were essentially the college coaches in this discussion, was at first that the current system is unsustainable. Which again, like I said, the idea that this system is foolproof and is without any sort of reason to change it, without any sort of fault, is probably wrong. But is it unsustainable? That seems like a cheap talking point. One that Jay Bilas quickly called out by saying, you guys are still making money, right? Everybody's kind of figured out how to deal with it, right? Maybe people don't like it. Maybe people aren't comfortable dealing with it, but y'all are dealing with it, right? And Jay Bilas is accurate in that point. And John Calipari quickly backed down from that. Now, John Calipari is not someone who wants to take this thing back to what it was 10 years ago, not like Trump said. John Calipari said, I want kids to make money. I like kids making money. I don't care how much they make. And I think there's a degree of truth to that after watching the entire conversation. I think John Calipari is fine with kids making money, but he may, like some other people, want to limit that. The last point that was made, and the other really good point that the coaches discussed, was that there needs to be more care about how these college athletes make use of the money, I guess. I think the better way to conclude is that the college coaches pointed out that they have concerns that while the money is more fair and certainly better than what the kids were making before, is it going to cause a negative impact? And the example Seth Greenberg brought up, I thought was really, really smart. He made the point that you get a kid right now who's making $500,000. I think John Calipari chimed in with this as well. Get a kid right now who's making $500,000, $600,000. Well, that's great. But when you get out of college and you're not a member of the Texas basketball team or the Duke basketball team or the Arizona football team, and you go out and try and get a real job, not as a kid who's going to be an NBA player or a professional athlete, or even someone who's going to take basketball to Italy or Greece or whatever overseas and play. If you're going to go out and get a regular job, that kid might apply for a job and be offered a salary of 60 grand, which would be pretty reasonably good for any recent college graduate. But that kid who just got done making 500, 600 grand, as Seth Greenberg pointed out, is going to say, 60 grand? Are you also giving me a car? Do I actually have to show up for the job? You're going to feed me too, right? You're going to give me some meals with that? So these kids, even though they're making more money, might not be adequately prepared for what's going to happen after college. And at the end of the day, the thing we all most want from colleges for our kids is for the kid to be adequately prepared for life, to be able to use that degree, and more importantly, what they learned in college, to go out there and lead a productive adult life. Not for 1 year or 2 years, but for 60 or whatever it is we got to work these days. So it's not wrong to think that while, again, the money the kids are getting now is more fair than it was before. And it certainly is better for the kids than it was before. It doesn't mean it's all the right way to handle it or the best way to handle it. Number one, place I land here is the priority has to be the kids, making the kids' lives better. Now, you can question how much colleges actually do that. You know, colleges aren't we're going to make your son or daughter the best version of themselves. Colleges are, here's a laundry list of things you can come here and learn. Here's a group of professors you can come here and talk to. And then at the end, if you do all the things we tell you to do, we'll give you a piece of paper that says you know stuff, right? Colleges don't guarantee that they're going to manage the mental health of your child. They don't guarantee that they're going to explain everything when it comes to how to get a job, how to do an interview. There are services for that. You know, again, if you want to shop in the college aisle and you look at, okay, I want my kid to go check out the anthropology aisle for a little bit, buy a little from there, but I want most of the stuff for them to buy to be in the business aisle. I want them to learn how to, work in sales, work in marketing, whatever it is. But we're going to shop a little in the anthropology aisle. We're going to do a little from the philosophy aisle. We're going to do a little from the speech aisle, right? Maybe we're going to minor in some of this, do it, maybe not quite as much as we're going to do from the business aisle, but a little more than everything else. It's not like colleges have a 18-step program for you to just do everything right. They have a laundry list of things they're going to offer you, and you can use whatever those things you want, and then hopefully you're prepared. In the same way, college athletes are going to be able to walk in and they can make some money and they can learn some skills, but it's up to them to figure it out when they get out. So while the colleges aren't going to do everything, they do allow everybody who goes there to get better, right? And then how much a kid can actually make use of that is up to the kid. Athletes currently get a little bonus in that they might be able to make a few $100,000 while they are there. And I understand what Seth Greenberg and John Calipari are saying about, yeah, we might give them a bunch of money. Calipari called it fugazi money, which is not totally inaccurate. But are we really making them better as a person, as an athlete, and probably more importantly, as a person? There's a valid, again, criticism, question there. Here's the thing. I'm a full believer in the idea, the old axiom of you give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day. You teach a man to fish, he'll eat for a lifetime. And if you're comparing that to college athletes, if you're not teaching the kids, these athletes, how to fish, finger quotes, are you really doing the right thing for them? It's a valid question. Here's the reality analogy of that. We're not giving the kid one fish. We're giving the kid like 500,000 fish. And yeah, we might not be teaching him how to fish, but if I give a kid 500,000 fish, he's going to eat for a long time to where he has way more margin for error to figure out how to fish or how he's going to fish. So the idea that there might be mental issues, or there might be problems with a kid who makes all this money for 4 years and then suddenly can't do it. They're not invalid. It doesn't mean we stop giving the kids the money. Reducing what the kids make is not the solution. And that's the problem, mostly, with the executive order, separate to the fact that it's probably not going to last in court very long. Major tenets of what Trump put down in his executive order are kids should make less, essentially. Spelled out in that there should be less transfers and also a reduction in NIL collectives, as they're called. And NIL collectives, very broadly put, are groups and organizations that come together to be able to provide NIL money for a school. So Texas might have an NIL collective of boosters. And I think because the idea of a booster, the old $100 handshake, dropping off envelopes for kids and all this stuff was illegal, that feels wrong. That feels dirty. And I think the idea of that is transferred over to NIL to where an NIL collective feels dirty. And look, these are essentially agents, and a lot of agents come with a distinctive smell. So I understand why people would think that. I don't know necessarily that an NIL collective is a bad thing. Again, the process is not perfect. There are things that can be improved. It doesn't mean the solution is less of NIL collectives. Maybe. Again, the kid needs to be the priority. And if you're taking money away from the kid, I don't see how that helps the kid. If you want to help the kid with mental issues that we think might come up from making these hundreds of thousands of dollars and then going out into the world after that, then help the kid that way. Provide those services. I've always thought that if you are going to give a kid a scholarship, and this was even before NIL, if you're going to give a kid a scholarship, the kid should be able to major in sports. He should be able to take classes on how to manage money, how to choose an agent, how to operate in front of the media, how to manage a brand now, how to manage your social media. This should be an entire major if you're an athlete at a Division I institution on scholarship, or in these days, making NIL money. And I think, yes, there should be probably a limit to how many of these athletes actually get into the program. You don't just let anybody. Some kid walks up who's 5'10", 350 pounds with no athletic ability. Yeah, you don't want them in the professional athlete program. But the margin for error, again, should be pretty wide. We don't have a problem with kids who major in art history, right? You don't have a problem with someone who says, I want to major in philosophy, I want to major in photography. There aren't colleges out there who say, nope, you can't do it. If a kid meets a set of standards to get into the college, to get into the program, then colleges are going to let them do it. Because again, colleges are not out there to make your kid all right. Colleges are out there to offer, here is a laundry list of things we will teach you. You can pick what you want to learn. And you get into our college if you meet a certain set of standards, GPA, grades, whatever it is. But not all of them are. And in fact, almost none of those college programs require a kid to be 100% employable in that field. So even if you think a kid is not going to make it to the NBA, NFL, if they want to major in professional sports and they're on scholarship, so you already think they're good enough for you to give them a free ride beyond whatever NIL they might have, there's no reason the kid can't major in professional sports. And frankly, a lot of the skills there would be good for any kid. Managing money, managing your brand, managing social media. I 1,000% would like my daughter in college right now to take courses in that. That should be the priority. Making things better for the kids. And if you're taking money away from kids, you better have a damn good reason why that's making things better for them. I bet you can't think of one. So I understand that there are concerns business-wise and with the bigger picture of this. And I don't think it's perfect right now. How could it be? It's been in existence for 5 years. I know there are a lot of people who point to concerns about Olympic sports or women's sports being cut. And that certainly is an issue. But to be fair, the NCAA in 2024-25 reported the highest participation in scholastic sports in the organization's history. So whatever is wrong with NIL, it's certainly not limiting people or decreasing the number of kids who participate in sports. And we can dive in, if you want, to all the reasons behind why athletics or why participation is up, because there are certainly programs and sports being cut, but there are also things being added. Women's flag football is currently going through a blossoming that's going to be about as fast as any sports program you've ever seen. 4 years ago, it didn't exist. 5 years from now, I'd be stunned if every college in the country didn't have flag football. In part because it's really cheap to put together. You don't need helmets. You don't need pads. You have the fields already there. You need footballs and flags. And that's the extent of the overhead when it comes to flag football separate of travel. So no matter what issues NIL might be bringing up, it is not decreasing the participation overall in sports. And while, yes, it might have some unintended consequences for these kids in terms of how to be able to handle the money, and manage the situation, taking the money away from the kids is not the answer. Or at least I haven't seen a good reason why it should be. Again, it doesn't mean you don't have other issues you might have to address, but then address them. And if you want to take the money away from kids to fund that, I could understand it, even if I'd kind of roll my eyes at it. Why are we taking 50 grand away from the kid making 150 grand as opposed to $1 million from the coach making 10 million, or 500 grand from the AD making 5 million? There are other ways that you can find that money if you really want to. But the ESPN debate, again, highly recommended. It was really smart. And there should be more things like that in televised sports. It wasn't heated. I mean, it was Jay Billis is dialed into this topic. He's someone that's really 1,000% for kids getting paid. So he will get a little dialed up when it comes to this chat. But overall, it was really smart, really interesting. I thought Seth Greenberg and John Calipari made the point about kids not being prepared for life after college from a point of view of they make X amount of dollars that they won't make, a lot of them, when they get out of school, was really smart and really well taken. It doesn't mean, though, that the executive order that Trump put down is the right answer. It was probably not. It won't last in court anyway. But I also do think that there has to be, most likely, a better way to manage all of this. I know change is hard for everybody. Change is something that people will have a hard time just getting with. And fast change, I think, exacerbates the issue. The way NIL has just descended onto college sports like an avalanche is something that a lot of people are going to have a problem with, whether those problems are right or wrong. And in this discussion, I think, is the result of that a little bit. So anyway, highly recommended. You check out that chat. Again, it's on my X feed, Thad Brown 7, if you want to take a look. The other big story from college sports this week was the Gino Auriemma, Dawn Staley argument from after their semifinal game on Friday. So after the game, South Carolina just whooped UConn. UConn had been unbeaten this year, basically killed everybody, and then they got a taste of their own medicine from South Carolina. Ironic, because then South Carolina got whooped by UCLA in the championship game on Sunday. But after the game Friday, if you didn't hear, as you can see, though, Gino Auriemma and Dawn Staley got into a pretty nasty war of words on the court afterward during the post-game handshake. And Gino did talk about it afterward. Actually, both coaches did. Dawn tried to move away from it a little bit. But Gino, having a season over and really not having a game to worry about, I think, I'm going to assume here, was a little more open in terms of why he wanted to talk about what the problem was. Now, he did, during the broadcast, complain about Dawn Staley and the way she was going after refs. And one of the points he made was, she's yelling, saying all these things. I got a kid over here with a ripped jersey, and the ref said they never saw it. Gino also said post-game that he thought the way Dawn handled, he didn't like the way that Dawn handled the pregame handshake. Basically said that Dawn Staley did not come up and shake his hand pregame. He said, this is what you do you before a game. This is how we do it in the tournament. And I sat there for X amount of seconds, and she never came and talked to and shook my hand. The thing was, of all the things that Gino Auriemma complained about after this argument, Dawn Staley not shaking his hand pregame, well, there was video of the two of them doing exactly that. It wasn't the nicest handshake ever, but there was 1,000% a handshake pregame. In addition, there was video of a UConn player ripping her own jersey. So the reason the refs didn't see the jersey get ripped wasn't because some player got held or fouled. It was because the player damaged the jersey on her own. So Gino Auriemma was pretty much dead wrong about most everything that he was mad about. And when he even got called out in the post-game press conference, the reporter said, hey, what was your issue with the pregame handshake? Because there's pictures and video of you guys doing exactly that. Gino said, well, you know, if you've watched the NCAA at all, you know what I'm talking about. The end game from this is just a really bad look for Gino Auriemma. This is not where a coach of his stature should be landing on something like this. He looks like a sore loser, bottom line, and a bad sore loser at that. And this is not the first time I've thought of that about Gino Auriemma. Guys like him who win all the time, and some of this is just being a natural human. If you win always, then you lose. You're really not prepared how to handle it, and you might not do a good job there. Now, Gino, he's 70 whatever. He's coached a million years. He hasn't won every game. He should be able to handle losing with a heck of a lot more class than he did in this game against South Carolina. And then not only did he handle the actual loss that day poorly, he did come out the next day with an apology. I don't like the way I handled things. That's not who I am. All your typical beats. But then he apologized to, quote, the South Carolina staff. Dawn Staley's name never came up in the apology. Gino Auriemma did not yell at the entire South Carolina staff. He only yelled at one person, Dawn Staley. He only complained about one person in the TV interview, Dawn Staley. It's just a bad look all around for Gino Auriemma. There's no excuse for the way he handled that. There's no, oh, well, you know, no. He was a bad loser. He looked whiny. And it was something that should be beneath a coach of his stature. Gino Auriemma has done everything there is to do in college basketball. You do not need to apologize if you're Gino for any sort of loss. Not even this year. You were whatever an O until you lost to South Carolina in the Final Four. South Carolina is a damn good program. There is no shame in losing to that team, even getting blown out by that team. So there's no reason for Gino to be bitter about getting beat by that program. That's a great program. So there's no world in this where I think you understand or sympathize with Gino Auriemma. He was wrong about what he complained about. He was probably wrong to complain in the first place. And then he couldn't even handle the apology the right way the next day. There's no world of this where Gino Auriemma looks good. And it's unfortunate because obviously he's one of the best coaches of all time. But stuff like this, I think is going to be a part of his legacy because I can't think of an example, but my gut feel of Gino has always been, this is kind of who he is. And some guys are just wired that way too. I guess you can make the argument that Gino Auriemma wouldn't be such a good winner if he was better at handling losses. I do get a little bit of that. It doesn't excuse how he handled it, though. You can be a great winner and still be a terrible human. And this was a terrible 24 hours for the human side of Gino Auriemma. On the flip side, been a pretty good 24 hours for the Sabres. Let's hit on that for a minute here. Sabres are in the playoffs, everybody. Not a surprise. They actually got in on Saturday when the Red Wings lost to the Rangers, which I thought was kind of ironic because Buffalo has had two of the longest playoff droughts in sports history. I think the longest probably in both their sports. I'd have to look it back up. And both the playoff droughts ended with the Buffalo teams watching TV. Neither the Bills nor the Sabres were competing or winning, or in the Sabres' case, even getting to overtime to earn a point to end the drought. Both teams had their droughts ended watching somebody else win. Now, obviously, the Bills had to win that last game in 2017 to set up Cincinnati helping them out in the game against the Ravens. And obviously, the Sabres had to win a bunch of games to put themselves in a position where somebody else could get them in. But it was kind of funny that you have these long playoff droughts and they both end but the team's not doing anything. So the Sabres are in, and this has been expected for a while. Congrats to Sabres fans and all y'all out there in Western New York who've been following Buffalo for the last 14 years waiting for this. As I talked about on Thursday, this is going to be, I think, at least to some degree, a fun final 5 games here for Buffalo to close out the season, knowing that objective A1 has been checked off. If the Sabres don't win another game this year, this is still going to be a wildly successful season. It won't feel like that for a while, if that's how the end of the season goes, but that will be the case. Now, it doesn't mean that Sabres fans or the team is satisfied. They shouldn't be. We've talked about this for a few weeks on the show, that this team is not just about making the playoffs. This is a 100% legit Stanley Cup contender, even if they've lost 5 of 7 and not looked quite as good the last few games. Being able to compete and hang at a playoff level intensity certainly seems to be at least part of the issue. The Sabres are a team that's, like, even though they officially got in over the weekend, they're a team that's been in the playoffs for weeks. I mean, we've known that this would be a playoff team, basically going back to the run they had coming out of the Olympic break. But they have lost 5 of 7, and they got a big game tonight against Tampa at home. And essentially, if the Sabres lose this game, they don't win the division. Because if Tampa wins, they would be in first place by 4 points, and with the Sabres having only 4 games left to play, and Tampa has the tiebreaker. So Buffalo would be 4 points back with only 4 games left and without the tiebreaker. So now there's a scenario where the Bills or the Sabres could get the tiebreaker, but it would require Tampa to lose a bunch of games in overtime or a shootout. Buffalo would have to basically run the table. It's not likely. So if you lose this game in regulation, you'd really need Tampa to lose 3 of the last 4 and Buffalo has to sweep. So the division is probably gone if the Sabres don't win tonight. So that makes this game against Tampa. You want to talk about playoff intensity, right? Sabres just lost to a Washington team that's on the fringes, still alive in the playoff race, but certainly on the outside looking in. That was the loss on Saturday. They'll lose to Ottawa on Thursday, another team that's very much in the mix to get that last playoff spot. So the Sabres are a team, and I think they referred to this a little bit, that can be on cruise control right now. Yes, seeding matters. We just talked about the division, all that stuff, but they're going to the postseason. Washington and Detroit, Seattle, team they beat Seattle. Who else did they lose to? Let me flip this up here. Last 5 of 7. The other losses are Detroit, Boston, and Anaheim. So Detroit very much in the back end of a playoff race, but alive. Boston still has a playoff spot to clinch. And Anaheim, although I think much safer in what's a terrible Pacific Division, is in a playoff race. So 5 of the last 7 that the Sabres have lost, all are teams that are battling for a playoff spot. Buffalo did beat the Islanders and the Kraken. Islanders in the middle of the race too, and Seattle a little less so. But I think it's fair to conclude, you look at those 7 games, 6 of them against 1,000% teams that are playing for their season. Buffalo's season has been in good shape, has been kind of assured. They're made men, right, to use the Mafia term. The Sabres are good to go for the postseason. That won't be the case when we get to late April, when the playoffs start. So the question is, can the Sabres match the intensity of teams that are playing for their lives in 2 weeks when everybody's playing for your life? I don't even know if we'll get a test of that tonight, because Tampa is as made as Buffalo is. They've been a playoff team for weeks. They've clinched, in the last week or so. They even could lose this game tonight and still have the advantage for the division, because they would have a game in hand and the tiebreaker, most likely. So I don't know if this is exactly a test of intensity game against Tampa, but those are coming. And I think that has become, as we've seen over the last 2-3 weeks here, a question of whether the Sabres can manage what will be a different level in the postseason. I wouldn't worry too much about the 5 of 7 here. The Sabres were never going to keep winning all the games they were winning. I mean, they were winning like 8 out of 10. Like, nobody does that. The fact the Sabres did it for 3 months is ridiculous. That was not going to hold up. All the Sabres have to do now is win 4 out of every 7. That's all that matters. So Yeah, there's some level of concern. I think goaltending's been a bit of an issue, certainly in that that loss to who was over the weekend. Just blanking. The Capitals, yes. The loss to the Capitals, I think, exposed some of the goaltending issues. And I do think if the Sabres do fall in the postseason, I think goaltending will be issue 1 or 2. Not because Alex Lyon or Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen are terrible, but I think they are certainly the weaker links on this Stanley Cup contending team. So Sabres losing 5 of 7. It's not the end of the world. It does raise some concerns. It is a situation we talk about in the NFL all the time. I will tell you that I will bet on the more desperate team 9 times out of 10 in the NFL, regardless of what the rosters say. And the teams the Sabres have been playing over the last 2 weeks are far more desperate than Buffalo is. Doesn't excuse losing 5 of 7, but I think it is understandable. And I think it is also something that should not be cause for concern. Let's take a break here. When we come back, what else I got in the list to talk about here? Oh, yes, ABS. People don't like accuracy, right? We love ABS. ABS is awesome, but fans are still finding something to complain about. I'm going to talk about why those fans are their own problem after a break. My name is Thad Brown. This is Rochester First. The kids, they got all the good candy over the weekend, all the Reese's peanut butter eggs, all the good jelly beans. They call the station you're watching Rock 1. More from me right after a break. Thad Brown back with you here on the Endgame on a Monday. College basketball championship game is tonight. Michigan, lay the points, everybody. I don't see any good reason to go away from Michigan after what they've done. Only team in NCAA history to score at least 90 in every tournament game. They hammered Arizona. They hammered everybody. I mean, they haven't been close in any game. So Michigan minus the points. I think the spread is 6.5. I would probably lay double that. Can't go. I mean, look, UConn's good enough. Dan Hurley, championship pedigree. I get all that. Michigan has been a machine. And Arizona looked a class better than either UConn or Illinois throughout this tournament before it. So the idea that UConn is going to put more of a dent into Michigan than Arizona did, I'd have to see it to believe it. And even if that happens, the spread is 6.5. I mean, even if UConn plays well, I could easily see this game being UConn's right there, maybe down 3 at the half, put a little scare into Michigan early in the half, and then Michigan walks away late and wins by 10 or 11. So we'll talk about it on Thursday if I'm wrong, but this feels like a Michigan coronation. And I thought that was going to be the case anyway. I thought the championship game was Michigan-Arizona on Saturday night, not whoever played tonight against the winner of that game. We'll see. I believe in UConn more than Illinois for sure. But I still would be happy to lay almost anything that you want to lay with Michigan tonight. So we talked last week about how much fun ABS has been for baseball, how good it's been, and how much of a improvement the whole system has been, how much fun it is, how enjoyable it is for fans too. And yet apparently that's not good enough for fans anymore, because there is a number of fans out there who are now complaining about the idea that some calls are overturned because balls are in the strike zone by the smallest of margins. The picture that's been going around, I don't know what game it's from, it don't matter, is from a ball that nicks the bottom right-hand corner of the strike zone by the very edge of a ball. And some, I think there was some officiating X site posted that picture with a poll that says, should this be a strike? Now, the answer to that question is, of course it is. That's what the rule is. Like, this is not a discussion. We have a box, the ball touches the box, it's a strike. But to me, this is a confirmation of something that I've kind of thought about a lot of fans and really the general sports public right now anyway. And this isn't all fans, but there certainly is a good chunk of fans out there that do not want replay to get the calls right. They don't even want the officials to get the calls right. What they want is they want replay to make the calls the way they think they should be. Not according to the rules, not according to any video evidence. This is what I saw and this is what I think it should be. Ergo, the replay or the official is wrong if they don't call it that way. Which, if you're someone who thinks that, that's a you problem. Every league has a set of rules and regulations and methodology for which officials need to enforce those rules. You want to argue about what the rules should be, that's fine. But once the rules exist, this is how the game has to be called. You don't get to just change the rules because you don't think it looks right or because I don't want a game being decided by that little margin for error. People are complaining about a centimeter. That a ball that touches the strike zone by a centimeter shouldn't be a strike because that's not close enough anyway. I had people on X telling me, well, no one would swing at a pitch there, so it shouldn't be a strike. Where we are in the world right now of sports is a technology that can now pinpoint where things are, where balls end up, where throws are, where things are hit, or in the world of tennis, served, returned, down to the centimeter. So we as fans have two choices. Either embrace it or stick our head in the sand. There's no reason to complain about something that's decided by a centimeter. Yeah, it might seem small and insignificant, but it's now the margin with which we can see things because the technology has improved that much. And this is why ABS is awesome. Because we can now figure out down to the centimeter whether a pitch is a strike or not, no matter what an umpire is called. And we can do it pretty damn efficiently and in a cool way, frankly, with how the replays are displayed on a stadium scoreboard. And this cycles back into all the complaining about the NFL stuff too, which remains the world leader in terms of fan complaints. People don't want rules called the way they are in the NFL rulebook. They want rules called the way they think they should be. It is really kind of laughable that we've gotten to a point of here's a clear, easy to understand method for which we can determine whether something is a ball or a strike, and fans still find some way to complain about it. I think a part of it too is a lot of us, especially my age or older, 40s, for a few more months at least, we grew up watching sports on TV for so long. You get an impression of what something looks like. That looks like an out. That looks like a pass interference. That looks like a foul. But the technology's gotten so good that it can sometimes reveal things we didn't know, things we didn't see, details that were too small or too fast for cameras and video equipment of 30, 40 years ago to pick up on. And we're learning more about how games are operated or what actually is an out, what actually is a penalty, what actually is a foul. And because some of those things, I think in theory, can be revealed by replay to be not only different, but sometimes 180 degrees opposed to the way you may have assumed watching through the technology of that people have a problem with it. I don't want to know that was an offside. I don't want to know that was a strike. It looked like a ball. And I know the one of the pushbacks I got on this on X was the offside rule of hockey. And I will say, look, when you talk about the hockey challenge rule, I get people have a problem with that. Not necessarily for the 1 centimeter part of it, but when you have a challenge on an offside rule in hockey, not only are you taking a goal off the board, which is way more important than one pitch. There's maybe 6 goals in a game. You take one of those off the board, it changes the game significantly. There's 250 pitches in a game. You flip one pitch, it ain't that big a deal, relatively. But the other part of that is if you challenge an offside rule in hockey, you're taking 30, 60, 90 seconds of gameplay that you just watched and saying, ignore all that. Whereas, again, you're just flipping one pitch in a baseball game. So I get the offside problem. We have a clear, easy-to-solve method of whether something is a ball or a strike. And the idea that we're going to complain about, well, it wasn't close enough, is laughable. Now, I will say I had a guy on X. I'm sorry, I'm not going to, let me see if I can find the feed here real quick. The real CH3. He actually made a couple good points. Number one, apparently the ABS strike zone has a margin of error of 1/6 of an inch. And this is true for tennis calls too. So the outside 1/6 of an inch, in theory, might not be accurate. And I pointed out to him, well, that's great, but then what do you do? And he said in cricket, they have a situation where if you want to challenge a call and it's in that margin of error, what they will say is, we're not going to overturn the call, but also we're not going to, the team who challenges doesn't lose the challenge, which would be a fair way to kind of mitigate that. That if you challenge and the ball only hits in the margin for error in the strike zone, well, then it's still the same call the umpire made in the field, but you don't lose a challenge. That'd be fine. Here's the problem. Fans have an easy way to interpret it. You take a casual fan who's never been to a baseball game before, they see the box, and if the ball touches the box, it's a strike. It's way too easy to sit and overturn now, even if the cricket solution is more fair. And yeah, even if there's a margin for error where the balls and strikes might be wrong, we have a box. You draw the line where you want. If you as baseball want to say, well, that outside 1/6 of an inch, we're not sure about, so we're going to draw the box 1/6 of an inch inside of that, cool. The box has been drawn. And at some point, you have a line, and if the ball touches that line, that is it. There's no debate about, well, it wasn't close enough. We know where the lines are, down to a centimeter. We know where the lines are, down to 1/6 of an inch right now. And if you as a fan can't handle that or don't like it, that sounds like a you problem, because the technology has gotten so good that we can solve for so many of those issues right now. We can get more calls right. I'm never surprised when fans find something to complain about when it comes to officiating, but that one did blow me away a little more than others. All right, every Monday, we bring in Caleb Carr or Rachel Liebert to talk about something weird, something wild, something noticeable that we saw over the weekend when it comes to the world of sports. It is our weekly segment called, You See This? So Caleb is in with us today. You can fix your camera up there, buddy. While you're doing that, I'll go first. I kind of the easy, the boring one. This isn't really like the talkative one, but if anybody didn't see it, Joe Adell is the bleeping man. Against the Seattle Mariners on Saturday, Adell brought back 3 different home runs. And people will call things a home run robbery sometimes when, like, you look at a replay and you're like, that probably would have just landed below the yellow line, or maybe it's. These were no doubters.
All of them.
These are all going out of the park if he doesn't get there. And the third one, which you're going to see a camera shot of a picture of it here in a minute, he literally goes into the stands to take away the home run. A couple cool things about this. Number one, I mean, this is the first time this has ever happened. I saw some stat service said over 25 years and 80,000 games we've profiled. This is the first. We didn't need you for this, right? I know.
We know it's cool.
I know this is the first time this has ever happened.
And that pic right there is insane.
Yeah,
there's a fan who posted one of their photos from behind, which is, I don't know if it was a fan or what it was.
No, it's definitely a fan. So
was it a fan?
The woman in the blue, right to the right of Joe Adell. That's the other cool thing.
Incredible.
So that's Kaylee K is her name.
Okay.
And she apparently doesn't have a social media feed, or the Angels did her dirty, because what happened is the Angels after the game said, does anybody have a picture of this? Send it to us. And she has the picture of him holding the ball up from behind with the whole crowd behind him. Mm-hmm. And it's clear and it's
a great picture.
Oh, man.
It's a great picture.
If you were a photographer with an $80 million camera and sat there the whole game, you would not have gotten a better picture.
Yeah.
So the fact that a fan has what might be the picture of the year in baseball, and obviously this cool thing no one's ever seen before happen, are two of the most fun parts about this. The third thing was, I don't know if you saw this, the Mariners the next day had a whiteboard up.
Oh, yeah.
And said, game plan for today, do not hit the ball to Joseph Adell. So
they're leaning into it. I like it.
Yeah.
It's funny.
It's fun. It was awesome. It was a 1-0 game too, so it mattered.
That's what I was going to bring up is
right.
only one of these. If he goes, I mean, you go 2 for 3. You even just getting 3 opportunities to Because like most of the time, home runs, they're like, all right, no one's catching that. But just to get 3 opportunities to do this is something that never happens. If you go 2 for 3, everyone's going to call that a great day.
Absolutely.
But now it's a completely different ball game. You maybe go to extras. Who knows what happens? I mean, he single-handedly won the game for the Angels with that. It's just insane.
It was awesome. It was awesome in 1,000 ways. So there's no way we were getting through this segment without bringing that up. All right. What do you got for me, Kev? You got a video for us? Or no?
I got some tennis. There is some video. It's what the Kentucky men's tennis posted. So hopefully we can show this. Let's take a look at it first. This is Eli Stevenson, and he jumps over the net to get what is the game-winning point. Now, the problem with it is...
virtually illegal, right?
It's illegal.
Yeah,
now, it's not illegal for what a lot of people probably think it's illegal for. What you're probably thinking is, oh, it's illegal because he went over the net. Mm-hmm. He's allowed to go over the net. So what happens is I couldn't find the name of his opponent. I mean, this is college tennis, as you can imagine. It's not covered too well. But what happened was his opponent hit the ball over the net, and it had a spin on it. So when it hit on Eli's side, it went back over to the other side of the net. Now, when that happens, you're allowed to lean over or you're allowed to jump. What the rule is, though, is that when you hit the ball, it must bounce twice or bounce once and then go out of bounds before you either touch the net if you lean or your feet land on the ground if you jump. Problem is that didn't happen.
Well, how would that ever happen, though?
That's a really great question. That's a really great question.
Let's see if I can fire it up again here.
But yeah, if you can get it again, if you watch, the ball kind of goes out of frame, but you can see it's still way too high when at least his first foot goes. So it bounces once, feet go, it's way too high.
So that's why he's trying to hit it sideways, though, right?
That's why you're trying to, yes. So what the officials ended up calling was that it was a dead ball before his feet touched the ground, therefore it counts. But when you go back and you look, and there's plenty of tennis fans and people who know a lot more about tennis than I do out there talking about it, saying definitely should not have counted. But that was the quote-unquote game winner.
Was it a close match?
It was close. So Georgia, which is like the 12th ranked tennis team in the country, was up three sets to 1 or 3 matches to 1. Kentucky had to win the final 3 singles matches. All of them went to the 3rd set. Mm-hmm. That was the first game. That was the first match, and he won that first set. And then the other 2 won their 3rd set easily. So if he wouldn't have gotten that, because that was like the final point of the match, if he wouldn't have gotten that and the other 2 would have still gotten theirs, it wouldn't have mattered. Georgia would have still won. So although it's not like a walk-off buzzer beater type of thing, that is still the point that won the match, the entire match for Kentucky.
If he lays out and is okay with landing flat on your face, which would probably be slightly painful, he would probably have gained himself a few tenths of a second for the ball to get out of bounds.
Probably, or at least a better angle to hit it. Because when he hit it down, kind of down and sideways, obviously he was trying to hit it out of bounds. But if you hit it when it's closer to the ground, like what you're saying is lean over the net, if you do it closer to the ground, you can probably get it to skip almost instead of bounce way up high. And you have a better chance of hitting the ground or hitting out of bounds before. But in the heat of the moment, the officials called it good. And I mean, it's technically, I think they're still saying that Kentucky won the match, but a lot of social media experts, I'll say, are saying it shouldn't have counted.
I will say that I don't think it's a lock that the ball wasn't out of bounds before his feet touched. At least,
no, it's not a lock.
From that angle, you can't really tell.
You can't really tell,
right.
But it's also one of those things where it's like, in basketball, you need indisputable evidence.
Yeah.
And it's kind of 50-50 based off that. That ball is, when his first foot touches the ground, that ball is still in frame and it's very high.
Yeah.
And then his second foot touches really fast.
Easy to logically assume.
Yes.
That was the incorrect call.
Yes. But like you said, you don't have the exact, you can't see it in that video.
I'm surprised they even have a rule for this. I guess you have to. It sounds like that. If you can hit a tennis shot that essentially bounces and spins back to your side of the court, that's a winner. There's almost no way to get around that.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, jumping over the net doesn't seem like something that happens often in tennis.
Well, not only that, but it would almost be impossible for it to be successful, is what I'm saying.
Yes, yeah. I don't know how unless you hit it. I mean, obviously he wants to hit it sideways away from his opponent. I feel like the only way you can get it to bounce twice is if you hit it the long way, like along the court.
Well, you don't need it to bounce twice. You just need it to be out of bounds, right?
bounce once inbounds and then obviously bounce once inbounds and then bounce out of bounds. Yes.
Oh, okay. So you do need a second bounce, no matter
You
what.
do need that second bounce. And I think based off everything I could find, it has to hit the out of bounds before your feet touch. So it has to bounce twice, not necessarily twice inbounds, but it has to bounce twice. Because if your feet touch, it's no good. And if the ball's still technically in play and your feet are on the ground, then I think it's no good. Again, not a tennis expert here.
The one thing I was thinking was if you hit it, like let's say when he makes contact in the air and hits it like right to a corner, so that the moment after it bounces, it's out of play, like it's out of bounds. Out of play is the wrong word. It's out of bounds in the air. But what you're saying is it has to touch something out of play before it's going to be good. I think
because I believe just because the ball is technically out of bounds, like in basketball, if the ball is crossed the line but it's in the air, it's not out of bounds until it touches the ground. I believe it's the same thing in tennis.
Okay, makes sense. That is a fascinating play.
Whether or not it was called right, it is a pretty athletic play.
Yeah.
Very.
Well, and the call is interesting too. Like I said, I'm interested that there even is a rule for that.
Yeah, it just doesn't seem like something that would ever happen. It must have happened once, and they were like, I guess we have to put it in now.
Exactly.
I guess we have to.
You're probably right. Man, that's wild. All right, that's going to wrap us up for today. Good stuff, man, there. College basketball guy, give me your I know who you're picking to win. What's your score prediction for Michigan UConn tonight?
Who do you think I'm picking to win?
Michigan?
I don't know.
Come on.
We don't know if Axel Lindenborg's playing yet. We don't know. And UConn's inevitable, dude. UConn's inevitable.
Not this year. I think
they're in
Michigan's
the finals. Dan Hurley. Never count out Dan Hurley.
Are you picking UConn then, big guy?
You know what? I'll go on the record. I'm picking UConn.
All right, there it is, everybody. Caleb decided to be wrong. I decided to be right. We'll let Caleb come back on Thursday and talk trash to me if UConn does win tonight. I'm looking
forward to it.
I'm losing some units tonight, by the way, if UConn wins, just so you know.
I might put some units on UConn just so I can love it even more.
All right. That's it for today. Caleb Carr, thanks for being on. I'll be back on Thursday here on the Endgame. We will see you then. The news right here is up next.
Get the Rochester First streaming app today for everything you love from News 8 On Demand, plus exclusive shows you won't see anywhere else. Search ROC and download for free on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV.